Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are LivingFit, your trainer's trainer. We not only have education courses for trainers to upgrade their game, but we have full on follow along programs, workouts, exercise breakdowns, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for you to reach your fitness goals. Now, enjoy the show.
What's going on, guys? Master Coach and Education Director Aaron Guyette here on the Living Fit Show, and I have the incredible pleasure, the great honor to have the almighty Mike Robertson. So Mike Robertson, he owns Robertson Training System. He's out there in the Midwest just making it happen. And if you have an athlete, or you think that you are an athlete and you just want to level that up, or if you're a coach and you don't know what the heck you are doing, Mike Robertson has a solution for both of those. So we're super pumped to have you here, Mike. How did you get into fitness?
Man, I think it was probably like a lot of us. I was that guy growing up. Okay, first off, every cliche about Indiana that you've heard is probably true, right? Like, we're obsessed with basketball, and like any Indiana kid, I was obsessed with basketball growing up, and probably even more so because I lived literally like miles from the nearest kid my age. So I grew up in the country, didn't have a lot to do. I remember growing up hitting tennis balls against a barn door, hitting, baseballs off a tee, and getting buckets in my backyard. And so I grew up loving basketball, loving the game, but I was always a little bit undersized growing up. And every kid in my class had gotten held back, I felt like. So not only was I a young kid, but then I'm, physically immature against all these other guys. And so I thought, man, like, I need an advantage. I need something that's going to give me a leg up. And so, again, this is the 90s. We didn't have a weight room in our high school until I was like a sophomore. All these middle school now have like hammer strength, and it's like racks and platforms. Dude, we had like hand-me-down dumbbells, random stuff that Ball State had given us. Anyway, I just realized, look, I need some sort of advantage. So I started working out. And I'm doing all the dumbest things on the planet, like sets of 100, the machine circuits. And the crazy thing is, when you're young, you can do anything and you get stronger, right?
Yeah.
So for me, just getting in the gym, I noticed in just one summer, like, hey, man, like, there's more range on my jump shot. There's a little bit more zip on my passes. And all these kids that were manhandling me in the years previous they weren't doing that to me anymore. Now I'm able to hold them off, and now I'm able to physically exert my will on them. So I got into it because of that. And then just over the years, I realized, hey, look, like, I'm not a Division I basketball player, volleyball player, baseball player. I was a decent athlete, but I wasn't good enough to play at the next level. But I realized when I got in the gym, I could help other people get to their next level. So that's what really flipped the switch for me. Like, I always loved sports. I love fitness. I love what fitness did for me. And I wanted to take that same passion that I had for lifting weights myself and try and infuse that into other people to help them achieve higher levels of success in their own sports.
So when you started out, did you start out in sort of athletics, whether it's like high school or collegiate or whatever, or did you start out like gym and then go in? Which way did you begin?
Yeah. So I always joke around that I've seen like every nook and cranny of the fitness industry, right? Because I started off at Ball State and I was a strength coach there and I did research there. But when I was done there, I went in the private sector and I thought I was going to do athletic development, but I did more rehab. And then I left that job and I did in-home one-on-one personal training, did some, high school work. So it's like I've seen it all, right? My entry point was working with those collegiate athletes, but I've seen it all over the years and I've experienced all these different areas, which, some people would say, oh, it's a disadvantage. You should specialize early. And I think that's a huge advantage because I saw all these different people, all these different bodies, and it gave me this really broad range of experiences so that now I feel like, hey, look, regardless of where you're at as an athlete or maybe as a coach, if we're working together, I can help you out because I've seen so many things over the years.
Yeah. So seeing so many things now, have you stayed fairly generalized or have you been able to niche it down and like, hey, this is the deal. This is what I'm really good at. Yeah, I can help you here. I can help you there. But this is what I smash.
Yeah. It took me a long time to figure that out. If you came to IFAST, if you came to our gym, we would say that everybody is an athlete. And we mean that. We've got 12-year-olds that legitimately want to play better baseball, better soccer, but we've got like 70 and 80-year-old retired people that just enjoy gardening or they enjoy playing golf. And so we help them too. So everybody's an athlete. But my focus now is almost exclusively athletics. I train a kind of a broad range because I've got little pieces here and there, but mostly soccer and basketball. Like those are the two sports I'm most passionate about. I love working with those athletes, and I feel like I can have the biggest impact working with them. And, you know how it is, right? Like when you open a gym or when you run a gym, like you kind of take a little bit of everybody. I've got a kid who's a race car driver right now, right? Like if you would have asked me 6 months ago, I would never train a race car driver, but he was like, no, I want to work with you. I heard good things. So I work with a race car driver, but soccer and basketball, if I had to say two things, that is it for me.
So his like clutch throttle timing is just through the roof. It's
impeccable. Impeccable. And he just mashes that clutch, man. His legs are strong.
Well, yeah, can we walk down that road just a little bit, because I am massively intrigued, and I'm sure anybody who's watching and listening is like, wait, how do you train a race car driver? Is it just like hand-eye coordination up the wazoo, and what do you do?
Look, man, it's such a skill-based sport. And the funny thing is, his name's Jacob. He's a great guy. I just told him, like, hey, man, there's actually a place like in Indy that trains exclusively race car drivers. So you might want to go there. He's like, no. He's like, I know the people that go there. I want to be with somebody else. I want my own thing. So I just told him, hey, look, I don't know about your sport, so I'm going to learn. You have to educate me. But yeah, I mean, there's a huge skill side of it, right? Huge reaction time. I can't necessarily help that. But what I can help with is general fitness. And when you look at, he wears a Whoop band. When you look at his heart rate, it looks like he went out and ran really hard for like 45 minutes straight.
Oh, wow.
I mean, his heart rate goes up and it doesn't come down for like 35, 40 minutes. So there's a huge aerobic element to it. Yeah. It almost looks like, I don't want to say strongman training, but there's this element of strength with endurance, where you're trying to keep his heart rate elevated for long periods of time. The other the other thing that I learned as I've been training him too is there's a body weight component too, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it might look cool to be 205 and yoked, but that slows you down when you're in a race car. So it's like you need this level of strength while maintaining his body weight, because you don't want him to get too big. That slows the car down. So yeah, man, it's really interesting. It's like that's what I've enjoyed about this over the years, is like you just meet all these super interesting people. And if you're passionate about it and you want to dive in, you learn so much about their sport along the way too. So that's why 21 years in, I'm still pretty jazzed to do this.
Right. Yeah. It's endless. It is.
Really. It is.
And we are constantly, like the Dr. Andy Galpin show is like just dropping all this like new stuff that we're finding out about muscles that we didn't even know before, so it's truly endless. Yeah. Okay. So then let's go back to sort of the mainstay, right? The niche of the soccer athlete, right? And the basketball athlete. So if you had, I mean, obviously it's not this easy because like you just said, it's super personalized, and you're going to make a lot of different, but generally speaking, what's going to make for a better soccer player versus what's going to make for a better basketball player? And I'm sure there's probably crossover and similarities, but also differences.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, and one thing that I've learned over the years between these two is like, I feel like the off-season work of a soccer player is very much done in the gym, right? Or as far as like their conditioning goes, it's done in the gym. It's very controlled. I don't feel like they play a lot of pickup. They don't always do a ton of like skill specific work. And part of that is because their off season's relatively short. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've had pro soccer players where, granted, this was kind of an anomaly because the guy played in an MLS Cup, but from MLS Cup to his preseason starting, he had 6 weeks off. I mean, like, that's nothing. You don't want to see him for a week or two at least, right? Like, just go
that
away.
Was like basketball during COVID, right? I think it was even less than that. But boom. Yeah. All right, here we go.
Okay, here we go. Season starting. Yeah. So, they have it's a more compressed off season. So I feel like a lot of what they do is with you. So I enjoy that aspect of it. The other thing is with soccer too, you have to put such an emphasis on conditioning, because if they show up to preseason and they're unfit, you're just begging for an injury. So I think that's one of the unique things about soccer versus basketball. I don't have to do a lot of the conditioning because they are on the court quite a bit. generally at worst, they're going to get skill specific work in 3 times a week. Some guys are going 5-6 days a week. And they also tend to ramp themselves up naturally as the off season goes on. So, early on, it's maybe 1s and 2s and you're working on some specific stuff. By the time season is close, like they're itching, they're ready to get out there and they're playing 5-on-5 full court for themselves. So the thing that I enjoy about training them is there's very much an element of movement. Not to say that soccer players don't need it, but basketball players, due to the shape of their body, generally being tall, short torsos, really long legs, there's specific things you need to do to improve how they move to keep them healthy. And then it's just fun because you can really kind of get on some of the strength and the power stuff, and some of my guys don't need it. Like if a guy touches 12-1, I don't really think I'm not egotistical enough to think that getting him to 12-2 is going to make him a more elite basketball player. Right. But it is fun because they're just so explosive. So there's this element of, okay, get them healthy, get them moving well, and then can you get them back to their previous levels of performance so they can hit the ground running when their season starts.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you've obviously, if you're training a race car driver, you're training every other athlete, but the main two tend to be that the soccer player, basketball. Yep. Guy, girl, doesn't matter, not sex or gender specific or anything.
No,
right?
No. And that's what's fun too is, I've got like this, I've kind of got the way my summer works is I have like a summer, like a pro group where it's guys that are like in the G League or they're playing overseas. They're trying to get on an NBA roster. I've generally got 1 or 2 private NBA guys. And then we just call it the 10 a.m. group. And it's just this hodgepodge mix of, I got some female soccer players. I got a female softball player. I got a rugby player in there right now. My race car driver, if he's in town, he's in that group. It's literally just like this hodgepodge mix of athletes. And it's so much fun, right? Because they're all competitive. They all want to get after it. They get along great. But, that group really keeps me young because they're 20 some years younger than me in most cases. But, man, they just love to get after it. They're passionate about their sport. They're passionate about spike ball. I don't know if you're a spike ball guy. Yeah. But, man, there were days last summer, especially during COVID, where they couldn't be out. They'd play spike ball for an hour before they'd start their workout. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's we would always include things like spike ball. We would have it was like basically like foam, like fake knives or whatever, but they were super soft foam, and we'd do like knife fighting and like all sorts. But it's to awesome. Get that real time play, but also competitive and hand-eye coordination, and just really rad. But it's really, it was play like spike ball, but you're still training, right?
Absolutely. Speed, agility, quickness, perception. Where is the ball going to come off? What move are they going to make? How are they going to hit it? Like there's elements I think that carry over to a lot of sports in that game.
Oh yeah, 100%. So are you trying to get in on that 10 a.m. spike ball group, or are you off having to do work?
No. There's plenty of times where they'll rope me in. The problem is I'm 42, almost 43 now. I'm pretty competitive still, so I'll get after it. But I don't know if I'm definitely not in my prime. Let's be real here. We go back 20 years to when I was playing like competitive sports very often. I think I could have gave him some work. I still give him some work, just not quite as sharp as I would have been back then.
You got to have a couple of those old man tricks, that you just don't see coming.
That's right.
Yeah, I know. I'm right there with you because I'm with the Marines, and they're all 20, young 20s, late teens, just in their prime. But I get everyone, I'm not in my prime, but I got to give them a run for their money at least.
No, absolutely. That's when I have to give somebody like one of these pro guys, I have to give them like 3 or 4 cues, or I'm really trying to massage them, to get them to do something right. That's when I give them the whole, okay, let the old man show you how it's done. So humble them a little bit, but I can still get the job done. It's just not quite at the pace that they would probably do it once they figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds to me like you're having a blast. So what did anything change and then sort of remain through COVID? Did anything adjust for you, or obviously things adjusted during, but like, did it adjust and it's like, oh, well, that's a silver lining. We're going to keep that. Or, that's a really good thing I didn't realize that we could do. And now we're going to do that. Did anything like that happen?
Man, I think one of the things that we learned very quickly is how how quickly we can adapt, right? And I don't think this is not novel to iFast. I think every fitness professional learned this very quickly. When your livelihood is taken away from you, you figure out how to pivot so you can keep making money, right? Like, I remember we were sitting in staff training and we had this whole plan laid out. This was like a week into COVID, right? And everybody's like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. And the press conferences are happening. So we had this whole plan laid out. It was like 2 pages. This is how we're going to disinfect the gym and this and that and the other. And literally, as we're sitting in staff training, our governor comes on and says the entire state is shut down for 2 weeks. Okay. Within 5 minutes, we were like, okay, how can we train people? Well, we can train people on Zoom. We had 4 Zoom rooms for all of our people. We had, ways for people to sign up. So we learned how to pivot, right? And even though I don't think we do a lot of that now, because I think at least where we're at, we're kind of beyond that and people feel safe and they're ready to come back in the gym. We learned, hey, when push comes to shove, we can make things happen. Yeah. And if that ever happens again, hey, we're ready to go back into that environment, right? And some of our members have equipment at home now that they picked up over that time. So if nothing else, it just taught us hey, whatever happens, we are resilient. We're going to figure out a way to get this done. And I think that's what's beautiful about our industry. As a gym owner myself, I look around and so many places got hit so much harder than us, right? Yeah. We were closed for 10 weeks, outright closed. But then I hear about places that were closed for essentially 10 months. Yeah. And I count my blessings and I feel for those people. But I think as an industry, we've learned, hey, look, there are things that we can do. There's ways we can work around this. And so I think that's the silver lining is if you're still here and you're still open, hey, you're a resilient MFer, good for you, man. I don't know how you did it, but kudos to you for getting it done.
Exactly. Yeah, it was totally one of those Darwinian moments, right? He's like, adapt or die, guys. Yeah. Here it is. Yeah. Whether you like it or not.
And you feel bad, right? Because, you owned a gym, right? For an extended period of time.
Right, 12 years, yeah.
Right. So you do it long enough and either you figure things out or you just don't. And so if you haven't figured out finances 5 or 10 years in, you probably didn't make it. And I hate to say it like that. Yeah. But, I think it worked out with everybody in some way, shape, or form. Even the people that closed their gym, maybe running a gym wasn't the best thing for you. And now you're an independent contractor somewhere else and you're doing better. Yeah. Right? You have less stress. You're just pocketing that money. You're giving the gym owner a little bit, but hey, now you don't have all that overhead and that stress of running a gym and it's hard. It's hard running a gym. And I think that's the best thing now is looking back, now we have pretty much all of our people back. We're back to kind of where we were pre-COVID. And so it's okay, I can kind of hang my hat on I think we're through this. Yeah. But just that resiliency and that kind of, I think the other thing it makes you do too is it makes you really dive in and realize, okay, what's most important here? Not just from running a business perspective, but from a financial perspective. Are there things that you don't need? Because I guarantee if you ran a gym and you're going to be closed for 3 months, you're looking at your bank account line item by line item. What? Oh, I don't need that. Why am I spending $200 a month on that? I'm getting rid of that. It just makes you so much leaner as a business. And I think that's a good thing to have happen. I mean, maybe not in that environment, in that situation, right? Yeah. But ultimately, hey, there's a lot of stuff that you're spending money on that you probably don't need or don't use anymore. Get rid of it and run a little bit leaner business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, total blessing in disguise. Even if you didn't make it, like you were saying, right? It's a blessing in disguise because probably you're in a better spot, in a better place. Hopefully you're in a better spot, in a better place. If you're not, we've got complete coach certification.
Yeah, exactly, right? I got something that'll help.
So do you talk about in the complete coach certificate, do you talk about the business side and the finance side and stuff like that? Or is it more the programming or what's
Yeah. I feel like I could talk about it just because everything that I've done, right? And everything that I talk about, I can talk about from a point of humility because I've made so many mistakes, right? 21 years is a lot of room for error, mistakes, failures. I don't talk about the business and marketing side as much because I feel look, you got guys like Luca that know that inside and out. Pat Rigsby, Pete Dupuis with Cressy Sport Performance. Like those guys know that. They live it. Mark Fisher's another one. Like they know it. They live it. That's like their thing. And I think probably the biggest struggle with iFast as a whole, it's not really a negative. It's just like me and Bill are so passionate about training.
Yeah.
We just don't focus as much on like those skills.
Yeah. You do it because it needs to get done so that you can move the thing forward so you can do the thing you love, which is programming and coaching.
Absolutely. Like very, very rarely have I thought, oh man, we need to take this and like make it global. It's like, I'd rather have one really awesome gym versus 100 that are like, okay. So the Complete Coach Cert is kind of the reason that I created it was I felt like, when I got my cert, and this is a long time ago, like 1999, 2000, when I got my cert, I had not trained one client up to that point. So I thought that was, okay, first off, that's weird. How can you pass a certification and not have any practical experience? But I also felt like, there's just these huge gaps in your education. It's like, okay, 3x10 is a hypertrophy protocol. Or, mixing rice and beans gives you a complete protein. But you don't know what to do when somebody has knee pain when they back squat. Or what happens when they have back pain when they deadlift, or what a good deadlift looks like. So that's the whole reason I created that, right? Is like you can pass a cert and still not have, I feel like, a lot of the essential skills necessary that make you a good trainer. So that's where, we dive in and we talk about the assessment process. We talk about writing programs and not just like 3x10 of every leg exercise known to man. It's like, hey, this is what like a normal program looks like for a normal human being. We talk about
put all of them in there. All of the legs are in there.
I know. It's like, look, we have all the parts of your lower leg. So it's like, I saw those programs and I did those. So that's why we can laugh about it, right? But, progressions, regressions, coaching cues, how to interact with clients. I mean, there's so many skills and like, there's just so much nuance that goes into coaching people that I feel like, look, I understand a certification gives you this base level of understanding, right? And there's value in that. Right. But then there's, okay, I'm ready to level up. I want to get to that next point where, hey, look, I want to have a series of squats. So if this one doesn't work, I've got another one. I want to know why I choose half kneeling over split stance activity. Like that stuff I feel like is important. And a lot of trainers just don't have that foundation. Yep. So that's why I created it. It's like, hey, here's this next level. When you're ready to go there, I've got that for you.
That's awesome. And so is this a certification that you have to go and see you? Can they get it online? Is it self-paced? And if it is, if I go screaming through it, how fast or how quick can I get it done? If I, want to take some time with it, what's the best way to do that cert?
Yeah, no, it's all online. And now that we're kind of out of the COVID era, I'm definitely considering starting to do it more in person. I'm 99% sure I'm going to go to Italy this year and do that there. So that's kind of exciting and cool. Yeah.
You're going to create a little vacation out of it too?
Highly likely. I like to kind of bookend it, a little bit of enjoyment, work, and then a little bit of enjoyment on the back end. But for right now, the cert is all online. It's self-paced. I always tell people, look, I'm a realist and I'm sure the self-help gurus would tell you, hey, 60 to 90 minutes a day. I'm also a realist. Like, hey, if you've got that time, great, do that. A lot of us, like I'm super busy right now between coaching, kiddos, family, all that. I give myself 15 minutes a day right now. Like, hey, if I spend 15 minutes today making myself better and I retain that habit, when I do have more free time, then I can do 45 to 60 later on in the year, right? Yeah. So it's all self-paced. You can probably do it. I mean, if you're just screaming through this thing an hour a day, probably get through it in, I don't know, it's 23, 24 hours. I think at this point with all the bonus materials. So, get through it in a couple days. But the thing is, and this is the thing that I always try and emphasize is don't just, and this is the problem, right? Like everybody puts all their books on Instagram. Like, I'm reading a book a week and they're not retaining any of it or not applying any of it. I'd rather you go through it slower, figure out ways to use it, apply it. So if you're going to watch a section on squatting, okay, well, why do I coach it like that? Why do I use these regressions? Take that information when somebody can't squat the way you want them to. Use one of the regressions, right, to kind of hone it, to understand why it works, to see what does and doesn't work for you. I feel like that's the real value in this, is not just consuming it, but actually taking it and applying it and making it your own.
And so when you get it, then you could technically, take a whole month, right, to go through all the material and then restart at the beginning of the next month and do it all again. Absolutely. And probably get a whole other layer of a practical application and the ability to coach and cue better and program better and all of the things that it provides, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have lifetime access. And, I have people that have gone through it 2, 3, 4 times now. And they said each time they've gone through it, they picked something else out or something that's different from what they picked out the time before. I mean, you've done this, right? Like, you read a really good book, and the first time you read it, 5 years ago, you're like, oh, it's a really good book. You come back to it 5 years later and you're like, oh, it's a really good book. And these are all these new things that I picked up or that I took away from it the second time because you've evolved, right?
Yeah.
And so that evolution for you, now you pick out different things that are more meaningful or relevant to you at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah. It might even completely change the way you experience the book, right?
Absolutely.
Completely change it, right? Like, whoa, my gosh,
absolutely.
This book is even better.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. And that is something that I have experienced myself is, education is great, but then you add some experience and then now you educate again or in a different area or whatever. It's like, man, it's even better. And it's like, oh man, like if I would have gone to college before the Marine Corps, I'm quite certain I would have gaffed off 90% of it. But the fact that I went after the Marine Corps and I was in the world trying to make $1, right? Every single minute of every single class just mattered so much more to me, and I could just immediately practically apply it. So I feel you on that for sure. You don't want to just read to just say, hey, I did it, check the box.
No. And like you said, that's one of the things, and I've tried to do this numerous times, is try and add a little bit every year to the course, right? And based on feedback. So, the first time I put it out, it's like, okay, here's the product. And then people were like, well, we want to see some assessment stuff. Okay, great. So I added a section on assessments. There were other people that were like, hey, this is great, but your model moves really well, right? Which we've all seen that, right? You're not going to pick out the person that moves the worst to demo your IG videos, right? So I picked somebody that moves well. And they're like, well, what happens when they don't move well? So then I did like a whole 2-day seminar and I brought people in. It's like, hey, look, here's 5 different body types. How do you coach this person? How do you choose the right exercise for this person? So that's where I've tried to kind of tweak it and customize it. So it's more of like this living, breathing thing. And it's like, okay, what are you struggling with now? Let me fill in that gap to help you do a better job of coaching, assessing, cueing, whatever it is you're working on.
Nice. And so the complete coach certification, is that geared toward athletic coaching? I mean, obviously you and I both agree that everyone's an athlete, but or is it geared towards just general coaching? Here's some really good, rules that you can go through. Obviously there's exceptions to some of these, but here's some great mainstays.
Yeah, no, I think it's more geared towards the general trainer and coach. That's not to say that strength and conditioning coaches or like people that work with athletes wouldn't benefit from it, but it's more foundational in nature. And I think one of the things that I'm going to add later on as I add elements to it is add more of like a speed and power component to it, because obviously that's something that's not only important if you work with athletes, but I think most people when they hear, oh, well, you don't train Grandma Betty the same, I'm like, damn sure I do, right? She may not be doing box jumps, but she's throwing med balls or she's slamming battling ropes. So trying to find ways to show people, because I feel like a lot of times when people hear train like an athlete, they think Glenn Robinson, 48-inch box jump. Like, no, that's not how it works for everybody. But you find ways to train power for all of your athletes. 100%. So I think that's something I'm going to add in later on. But for right now, I just think of it as this really strong foundational coaching tool that, S&C coaches can benefit from it, but so will just your personal trainers that are working with Gen Pop clients.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's like, okay, you got your cert, you got your job, now get better at your job. Do this.
Exactly. Like, here's how all this works in the real world. When somebody can't back squat or they can't bench press, here are the activities that you have them do in lieu of that. Or here are the activities you use to actually make them move better and feel better so they don't hurt when they do those other activities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, glad that you can use some 20-pound words, but let's actually get the rubber on the road and like get
Right.
some good results, right? With
That's
those.
right.
Yeah, cool. So obviously, Robertson Training Systems, right? People can go and check out our amazing interview that we did.
Yep.
But they can also check out a million.
The best physical prep podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
1A and then 1B Marcus Martinez somewhere in there.
There you go.
But don't tell him I said that.
No, yeah, he knows. I'm just kidding. So they can. But the cool part is, I mean, you are so consistent with that. You have such incredible guests on there that you can always glean something, if not many things, from every single show. But then, I mean, you're doing articles. You're obviously you have a brick and mortar, and you're doing programming and all sorts of stuff. And like you said, you've experienced it all, so you just have such a great amount of, I would call it at this point, wisdom, right?
Yeah.
That you can give to whether it's a coach or it's somebody who's an athlete, a human who's trying to be a better athlete, right? They're going to be able to glean something from the material that you have provided. And obviously we could continue, and I do want to continue. This has actually been a really just fun and relaxing, and kind of it ended up being a spur of the moment interview, even though we had scheduled it twice. So I'm super pumped because maybe it gave it a different little bit of energy, which I totally appreciated. But every single show, we finish the show with asking every single guest, what is Living Fit to them? And I would love to hear your answer, Mike.
Yeah. This is tough. And I think my answer 10 years ago definitely would have been vastly different, especially coming out of the world of powerlifting and focusing so much on strength. But I think now Living Fit to me is finding this blend that works for you. And what I mean by that is I always talk about 4 elements, right? Training, nutrition, recovery, mindset, and meditation. So for me, those are like the 4 pillars, and you have to find that balance that works best for you, but that's what it means to me. So, it's getting in the gym. And I know getting in the gym for me is kind of like my keystone habit. It's the one key. When I turn that, it's like the nutrition's better. Then I'm more inclined to get 8 hours or whatever of sleep. I'm more inclined to get my meditation in. So finding those keystone habits, finding that unique blend of training, nutrition, recovery, mindset, meditation that works best for you, that is what Living Fit means to me. And it's finding that balance, because I know when I do those things, man, I'm a better business owner. I'm a better trainer and coach. I'm a better husband, better father. Like that is the secret sauce for me. So that's what Living Fit means to me.
That's awesome. Well, couldn't have finished it better myself. Mike, thank you so much. I really am honored by you hopping on the show and sharing your wisdom.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, for more interviews like that, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're looking for not only those interviews, but follow along programs, exercise breakdowns, workouts, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for your fitness results, make sure you hop on to Living.Fit, become a member today, and I'll see you on the next one.